Welcome to Beautiful Journey, a podcast about the inspiring journeys of women from around the world and their successes. I am Alya Michelson. What are the reasons a woman might decide to leave the country where she grew up and come to the United States? School, family, a job, or chosen industry? Or maybe a simple desire to walk around in a bikini all day. Today, I want you to meet Lola Adeyemo. Lola Adeyemo is a scientist and a professional in biotech. She came to America from Nigeria, first to Texas to get her degree. Besides the school and the program she wanted to attend as a student, Lola told me the reason she chose to immigrate to Texas.
The weather. I did hear, a lot that the weather in Texas was very similar to what we have in Nigeria. There was a lot I didn't think about before I came. So you have to understand, I grew up in the southwestern part of Nigeria. I grew up in a relatively small town, not the biggest city in Nigeria. I went to elementary school in a school where my dad was a professor, a school that went up until college. I went to the same college. I went to boarding school a couple of miles from my house. So I grew up in a town where really my name meant something, where I knew my neighbors, where if I needed something, I knew everybody. And so for me, it was all about, I always told my dad as a young girl that I wanted to go out of the country to further my education. And immediately I finished school, I started looking into that. And then I started looking, for the next opportunity. School, I did not think about, like day-to-day living. Are you even welcome there? Do you even fit in there? I made arrangements for my school over the phone. The systems were very, very helpful. The International Student Office, I called. Whenever I had any question, I'll call the International Student Office. I called about my program. I booked my pickup appointment from the airport. I paid for my apartment, walking distance from the school, right? Like I'm trying to do these. I'm trying to go to school. And here is everything I need to do. The school picked me up and I got to my furnished apartment. And they had a shuttle for international students, and I went shopping to get everything I needed, and then started real life with classes. I think the first time it really dawned on me is that I'm a foreigner in a new country was when I went to the grocery store and I was trying to locate an item. And of course, when you need help, you ask for help. And I asked this lady, one of the clerks, confidently, and she looked at me. The look was just very interesting because it wasn't like, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't know what you're trying to say. It was like, I don't know what you're saying, right? Like, I can't hear you. And I repeated myself a couple of times and I ended up walking away. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they can't even hear me. How am I going to survive in this place? And my education was in English, so I never was concerned about the language barrier, right? I'm thinking, oh, I speak English. This is America. They speak English. But there was a difference. And that was the first time it really hit me that, oh my gosh, I'm here all by myself, left my large family to come into this strange place. And it's just beginning.
Was your family supportive back home? Was your community supportive?
Oh, yeah, my family was supportive. I mean, I don't think anybody tried to stop me. Again, it's that perception of US, you're making decisions that would affect your life for good, right? By choosing to go to school outside of Nigeria is always a good opportunity, right? So my family was supportive. My parents were, of course, a little concerned. But I had friends. So I had college friends. I didn't have any family here. I didn't have anybody that was really very close to them that they trusted. So they tried as much as possible to kind of reach out to people, get people's numbers. But I didn't have anybody, not even in Houston, where I went to school.
What was your family concerned about?
I think their concerns were more around safety because in Nigeria, you have to understand the culture is as a girl, as a young girl, you don't leave the house. You pretty much live with your parents until you get married and then you go and live with your husband. So before I moved to the US, I was in a different town working and I was living with my uncle and his family. Right? That's how it is. If you're going to another city, you look for family and then you stay with family. Now I'm moving out at this young age to a different country where they can't easily come help me, and I'm staying by myself. So it was more for security for you being female.
And what did you tell them when they were saying, you cannot go, you don't have a husband, you don't have a family? So what did you tell? How did they let you go?
Well, they didn't tell me that. I think I was privileged in that way. My dad, at least a little bit, enlightened. He was a college professor. He's passed on now, but he himself got his master's and his PhD in UK, in Exeter. And so he's aware that going for an education on a student visa, you have the academic system support. And I will say my husband now and I were friends then, but he lived in California. And I don't think my dad really understand how far away it is that, this person that you don't know who is a friend lives in a different, like a different country away. So I remembered, him writing numbers and names of all the people I know in the US. And I'm like, what are you going to do? If you can't find me, you're going to call everybody in the US. So they really were excited for me. Or maybe I just chose to ignore the fear because, again, when I get my mind on doing things, my dad knows, right? Like I just make my plans. And, I booked my appointment for my visa and I went to the embassy and I booked my apartment, right? Like I'm just like that. So maybe I didn't really give them a choice.
You said that there was that moment in the store when you walked in and you suddenly realized that you an immigrant, that you're not from this country, that you're different. I also had this moment in my experience. And for me, there was the moment when I actually went deep to myself and started kind of basically, checking on myself and thinking what's left from me when I left my country, what I am right now.
I started being very self-conscious with my accent. And I probably don't speak as clearly as I do now, then, to be fair, but still, it's this awareness of the way I talk that I had not felt before. And I remembered I didn't feel comfortable like the way I am naturally engaging in conversation with strangers. I wouldn't do that when I go to the store. If somebody else is there with me, I'll let you do the talking. I'll just keep quiet. I didn't feel safe to just hold conversations with people because I felt very embarrassed when people say, I can't hear you or I don't know what you're saying. It seems like there's something wrong with me. And so I feel like I shut down a small part of myself.
What helps you to find the voice?
I think I'm still on that journey because getting into speaking now, maybe my writing helped, putting my thoughts into words. And writing it down really helped because, again, I was in school for like 16 months full time. And so the more I got comfortable in my space, of course, I found my voice. But there was a different layer of losing my voice that happened when I got into corporate America in a different city again, right? So I started to get comfortable in my school, on my campus. I didn't go to town very much, right? So my apartment was walking distance to school. A typical day for me was get out of my apartment at 6:30, pack my lunch, dinner, and breakfast, pack my gym clothes. So it would be from my apartment to the gym, then shower, then go to my campus job, then go to class. So I really was able to exist in a bubble for a while. But then when I got my first job in San Diego, California, another different city from Houston, right? And then I'm in corporate America in the biotech world where there's not a lot of women. There's not a lot of women my color. So I feel like losing my voice also took, multiple steps back because I don't belong here. I don't fit in. I just need to know what they want me to do so I can do it. And that's it.
Lola moved to San Diego after finishing her degree and took a corporate job in biotech. The transition was not very easy for her, like for most in her situation. One thing that made a difference was that her company had resources for employees to connect with each other based on things they had in common. Employees who were women, employees who were parents of young children, employees in underrepresented groups in science and tech. Lola told me about how she became aware of the layers in the intersectionality of her identity as a woman, as an immigrant woman, and as a Black woman in a corporate job in America.
I joined employee resource groups. I joined committees at work, different from my day job, different from my role. And I found spaces that helped me thrive, helped me find people that are having similar challenges to what I'm having, right? People that felt the same thing I felt. And I realized, okay, it's not just me. It's not just me. And getting comfortable in my own voice and in my skills. It's a longer process when you're in corporate America. And I think I became an employee resource group member. I became an employee resource group leader. I ended up being the one that would try to advocate for other people. And then I was officially asked to join the diversity, equity, and inclusion team. And that's very broad, right? My responsibilities were very broad. And I realized I'm really just concerned about the people and the kind of spaces that they have, right? Employee resource group just fits something that was missing for me. And I wanted to help other people feel that. So when I started my own company, it's that focus. How can I help more people within corporate American work system feel safe and be able to show up fully? And it's easier to be passionate when you think of something that helps somebody else. For me, I think the more I do this, the more I find my voice, because when it's happening to me, it's easy to just feel like, oh, it's just you. Don't be a baby. You'll be fine. But when you see it happening to other people, you see people not able to show up, and then having conversations and realizing for immigrants, it doesn't matter what country we're from. That feeling is very similar when you are coming in and into corporate America. It's such a narrow space as well, because there's a lot of support for like immigrants. There's a lot of conversation. I won't say there's a lot of support for immigrants in America overall. But then when you get into corporate America, it's almost like the privileged immigrants kind of feeling like, your life is good. You've got a job in a corporate place. What else do you have to worry about? I also talk about intersectionality separately, because the more the levels of underrepresentation that you have, it's a compounded impact, right? It's not just, oh, you're a minority. It's how many layers, how many levels of these do you have? And how does it compound to, silence you, to impact you, the way you work? So for me, it was, being a woman, being Black in America, the biggest thing for me when I came in was being a woman, because I grew up in Nigeria, and gender inequities is, I would say, is the one that has the largest impact for me. I didn't see a lot of women, in corporate workplaces. A lot of the women around me in the small town that I grew up, were staying at home, or they had their small businesses. We didn't even have a lot of corporate organizations in my town. So for me is, female role models, and that expectation that the society adds, that you don't even need to go to college, right? Or the biggest compliment I heard when I was young was, you're so pretty, and somebody would say, oh, you're going to find such a good husband, So it's comments like that. That's kind of the space I was in. But I did have, my family, very educated. My father's siblings are a medical doctor. We have another professor. I had those role models. So I knew it could happen. It was possible. But then coming into corporate America, coming into America overall, being Black adds another layer. And then being in the corporate workplace and then being a parent, it almost feels like you can't breathe. You can't catch a break, because every layer adds something different.
I hear the child voice behind you.
Oh, you can hear? Oh, that's pretty loud. Yes, I have 3 of them. So that's my 2-year-old.
I had very funny conversation with my older girl recently. We celebrate our ancestral roots in our family, but together with this, I feel like I belong here. I do associate myself with America. I'm American. And it turned out that for my children, I'm a complete foreigner. I'm just curious about conversation between you and your children.
It's funny. So my son just turned 9. He just turned 9 a couple of days ago. They're still pretty young. My daughter is 6, so she has no idea. But I remember 3 years ago when my son was making a comment about his school, how he really likes his school. And then I said something about my school, and he said, "Oh, did you go to my school too when you were little?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I was driving." And I just said, "No, no, my school is far away in Nigeria." And he's like, "You went to school in Nigeria? I thought only grandpa stays in Nigeria." And I said, "No, you can't remember that mom came from Nigeria." And she's like, "So you're not from the US?" And so, and I realized, oh, I guess I just assume my kids know. And how do I have this conversation and explain to them? And so for him, he was really surprised that I'm not from here, but I speak my language, my dialects back home. And so he knows that, this is Nigeria. That's what he calls it, even though it's one of more than 100 languages. So I don't think they grasp it yet, but they definitely feel like they are from here. Yeah, the word immigrant doesn't even yeah, they can't comprehend that yet.
Okay. Is there a stereotype that surprised you? And how do we combat stereotypes within our society?
Oh, the stereotypes. So the favorite ones, which I actually had in the introduction of my book as well, is when somebody at work asks me if I'm trying to bring my family here. And the way he said it, the way he phrased it, was like, it took me a minute because I'm like, what do you mean, am I trying to bring my family here? Like, my parents can come here whenever they want. And he sounded surprised. And I said, yeah, they can visit whenever they want, but they don't want to live here. And I think he was kind of, caught off guard. Like, so there's somebody that lives in Africa, in Nigeria, that doesn't want to come to the US. Almost like everybody wants to live in the US. What do you mean? I was like, no, my dad especially does not want to live in the US. He comes to visit because of me, but he won't relocate here. So yeah. Yeah, I think people just assume that everybody here is asylum or refugee, and you are taking something from them, right? Which you are, but it's a different kind of feeling for people to grasp that we're actually comfortable back home and it's my choice to be here. I could have stayed.
How do we combat these stereotypes?
I don't know. By continuing to talk about this, by bringing people, by changing the narrative. And what am I trying to tell people is that I'm more than my name. I'm more than what you hear. Take time to know me. I need people to listen to this kind of conversations and realize the danger of just assuming things about immigrants because you hear their name or because you hear an accent.
Be curious.
Be curious. I love that. Yeah.
What do you think communities can do to welcome immigrants and make the transition easier?
Again, there's a lot of narrative that is out there that the negative narratives are very dominant. So maybe having programs that create awareness, programs that celebrates, diversity and makes it okay to be different, because being different means you're unique. Being different means that you bring multiple things to the table that other people can't. Celebrating the uniqueness. Like when I talk about managers and hiring, it's sort of like the conversation that are going on now with parents. It's like, as a mom, I feel like a pretty good project manager because I'm managing my kids' schedule and my life and my work. Instead of looking at, oh, you're a parent, that's a liability, looking at it as that's an asset. You have to be pretty organized. Like amplifying those aspects of being different that really brings value to our communities, that makes the community richer, that gives us more. It's like language barrier. I always tell people now, I know more languages than you do. I read and write Yoruba, which is my local dialect. And I also speak English, right? So when you look at my English, if you think there's a problem, well, you have to understand, I've got two of them in my brain, right? So that's way better. So amplifying the positives instead of just the negatives that the media keeps hyping, and helping people to have that narrative, because I give people the benefit of doubt a lot of times. I'm like, well, they don't know, right? Don't take it personal. When I was in college, I once had somebody ask me, where do we live in Africa? Like literally asking me, where do we live? I'm like, in homes. And then I was thinking about it. That's probably all the image they ever see, right? And that's the narrative that is being fed to them through someone or through the TV.
Are you shy about your accent today?
Oh, I think I've gotten over that. Just because now I do speak, I still, depending on the kind of space I'm going into, if I'm going to a very white, male dominated space, that fear, that nervousness, that self consciousness is still there. But I've learned to appreciate the fact that I speak differently, but I also speak clearly. So I can never speak like you do, but I also struggle to hear you sometimes, right?
Well, what do you tell them? How do they receive you?
I get clear on my message when I'm going there, because if I'm there and I'm there to talk about something, I'm the expert to you. So I psych myself up. And if you're bringing me to speak, I am an expert in this topic. So you are here to listen to me. So you will pay attention, right? If I was there, when I was working in corporate, if I was there as a minority in the room, there's a lot of getting ignored, right? There's a lot of, you say something and people pat you on the back and they move on. And, coming out of that, of course, it's still a journey. I'm still on that journey. But I think as an entrepreneur, it's now standing in my identity as I continue to find my voice, is reminding myself I'm here because I have something that you don't. And that's why, my takeaways for immigrants is it starts from our identity, right? We can try to be like everybody else everywhere. We're always going to change, but it starts from who am I? Who am I? Nobody can take that away from you once you stand in that. And then as you go into different spaces, your nervousness is going to vary depending on who is in the room, right? If you're in a very diverse space, you probably feel more confident. If you're in a very homogeneous space, your confidence goes down, especially if you're a woman, right? There's all of these self-doubt and questions. But remember, who am I and why am I here? And lean into that, because you're never going to be like everybody else. You're just you.
That was my conversation with Lola Adeyemo about her beautiful journey. Lola is a scientist and a biotech professional based in San Diego. She also is a speaker, a consultant, and a small business owner. Her book, Thriving in Intersectionality, Immigrants, Belonging, and Corporate America, is now available on Amazon. You can learn more about Lola and her company, EQImindset, at www.lolaspeaker.com. You can hear more beautiful journey stories at my website, alyamichelson.org/beautiful journey, or subscribe to the podcast feed so you don't miss an episode. And if you or someone you know would be a good person for me to talk with, I would love to hear from you. You can find our contact form at alyamichelson.org. This podcast is produced by Emily Jenners, Sarah Fay, and Inside Voices Media. I'm Alya Michelson, and thank you for listening.